Hey, my name's Noah Bennett. I'm 27 and I work as an electrical engineer for a mid-sized firm in Rochester, New York. It's a solid job. Steady hours, good benefits, the kind of thing that keeps the lights on in my small ranch-style music house on the outskirts of town. The neighborhood is quiet, the sort of suburban spot where people mow their lawns every Saturday and wave from their driveways without stopping to chat. I've lived here alone for about 3 years now, ever since my last relationship fizzled out. It wasn't dramatic. We just grew apart, and I decided it was time to focus on myself. No hard feelings, no big regrets. Life's been simple since then. Work during the week, maybe a beer with buddies on Friday nights, and tinkering with projects in my garage on weekends. Across the street lives Evelyn Harper. She's 38, a university lecturer teaching English literature at the local college. She moved in about a year ago, right after her divorce, though I didn't know that at first. Evelyn's the type of woman who carries herself with quiet grace, tall, with shoulder-length auburn hair she often ties back, and eyes that are a deep hazel, always seeming a little distant, like she's holding back a story. She dresses neatly, simple blouses and skirts, nothing flashy, but there's an elegance to her that makes you notice. I figured her out slowly through those small neighborly interactions. We'd nod hello when I was checking the mail, or she was watering her flower beds. Once during a rainstorm, I helped her carry groceries from her car to her porch. In return, she'd occasionally drop off a plate of homemade cookies. Oatmeal raisin, my favorite, though I never told her that. Our exchanges were always polite, nothing more. I'd fix a flickering light in her garage one afternoon, and she'd thank me with a cup of coffee on her front steps. She didn't join the block parties much, preferring to keep to herself. But when she did show up, people gravitated toward her. There was something about Evelyn, a subtle strength mixed with a hint of sadness, that made you want to know more. I caught myself wondering about her life sometimes, but I never pried. We were just neighbors after all. That changed on a warm Saturday evening in late summer. Old Mr. Wilkins, the guy down the block who'd lived here forever, was turning 80. He threw a casual backyard bash for the whole neighborhood, string lights draped between the trees, a playlist of old jazz standards humming from a portable speaker, and the smell of burgers and hot dogs sizzling on the grill. Kids ran around chasing fireflies, and the adults clustered in groups, laughing over plastic cups of beer and wine. I showed up with a six-pack and a store-bought cake, figuring it would be a low-key night. Evelyn was there too, surprisingly, standing off to the side in a light blue sundress, sipping red wine and chatting with a couple of the older ladies from the street. I got roped into manning the grill with a few of the guys, flipping patties, joking about sports, the usual. Every now and then I'd glance over at Evelyn. She looked relaxed, her laugh carrying softly across the yard when someone said something funny. As the sun dipped lower, the party shifted to games. First, a round of cornhole, then some silly trivia about the neighborhood. Eventually, someone suggested truth or dare light. But it morphed into this old tradition they called mock proposals. The rules were simple. Draw a slip from a hat, and if you got the loser one, you had to fake propose to your partner or anyone single for laughs. I wasn't planning to play. I didn't have a girlfriend, and it seemed dumb. But the guys ribbed me. Come on, Noah. Live a little, and before I knew it, I was in. Slips went around, and damn if I didn't pull the short straw. The yard erupted in cheers and whistles. Propose to who? I laughed, playing it off. I'm flying solo here. They hooted more, suggesting random names, but my eyes landed on Evelyn across the way. She was watching, a small smile tugging at her lips, like she knew exactly what was coming. In that split second, with everyone egging me on, I grabbed a cookie from the dessert table, round and plain like a makeshift ring, and walked over to her. The crowd quieted a bit as I knelt dramatically on one knee, holding out the cookie. "Evelyn Harper," I said, my voice louder than I intended. "Will you marry me? I promise to fix every outlet in the house, mow the lawn forever, and eat your cookies for the rest of my life." Laughter exploded around us. "Claps! Whoops!" someone yelling. "Say yes." I expected her to blush, maybe wave it off with a joke, but Evelyn just looked down at me, her expression calm, almost serious. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes locking onto mine in a way that made my heart stutter. Then, clear as day, she said, "I thought you'd never ask." The yard went silent for a beat, then erupted again, but this time with surprised murmurs mixed in. I stood up, cookie still in hand, not sure if she was playing along or something else. Her smile lingered, soft and genuine. And in that moment under the string lights, I realized the joke wasn't just a joke anymore. It had cracked open a door I didn't even know was there. The party wrapped up around 10 p.m., with people lingering in small groups, still chuckling about the games and the food. Mr. Wilkins hugged everyone goodbye, and the neighbors trickled out into the night carrying leftover plates and empty coolers. I walked Evelyn to her door, just across the street from mine, under the glow of the street lamps. "That was unexpected," I said, rubbing the back of my neck, trying to play it cool. She paused on her porch steps, turning to face me with that same enigmatic smile. "Life's full of those," she replied softly. "Good night, Noah." The door clicked shut behind her, and I stood there for a moment, the echo of her words hanging in the air like the jazz music fading from the yard. Back in my house, I tossed my keys on the kitchen counter and collapsed onto the couch, staring at the ceiling fan, spinning lazily above. Sleep didn't come easy that night. My mind kept replaying the moment, her eyes locking onto mine the way her voice had cut through the laughter. Was it just a joke? Or had I accidentally tapped into something real? I'd always seen Evelyn as composed, almost untouchable. But tonight, there'd been a spark, a vulnerability in her response that made me question everything. By morning, I was still turning it over in my head, but one thing was clear. I couldn't let it hang there unresolved. I stopped by the corner florist on my way back from a quick jog, picking up a small bouquet of wildflowers. Nothing flashy, just daisies and some greenery, the kind that looked like they could have come from her own garden. It was an impulse, really, but I told myself it was just a thank you for the cookies she'd given me a week earlier. I crossed the street, heart pounding a little harder than it should have, and knocked on her door. She answered in jeans and a loose sweater, her hair down for once, looking surprised but not displeased. "Noah, everything okay?" Yeah, I said, holding out the flowers. "Just thought these might brighten your morning. Thanks again for those cookies last week." She took them, her fingers brushing mine briefly, and her expression softened. "That's sweet. Come in, I've got coffee brewing." I followed her into the kitchen, the space warm and inviting with stacks of books on the counter and a vase of dried herbs by the window. She poured 2 mugs and we sat at the small table, the steam rising between us. The awkwardness lingered for a minute, but then she broke it about last night. "That proposal, everyone's probably still talking about it," I laughed nervously. "Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It was just the game." She stirred her coffee, her eyes meeting mine over the rim of her mug. It was funny, but it got me thinking. We talked then, really talked for the first time, beyond surface-level chit-chat. I opened up about my job, the long hours troubleshooting circuits and wiring, the satisfaction of making things work, but also the isolation of it. "I love what I do," I admitted, "but sometimes I feel like I'm just going through the motions, like I'm young enough to chase dreams, but old enough to know better. And after my last breakup, I don't know, it's been quiet." Evelyn listened, nodding thoughtfully, and then she shared her side. "My marriage lasted almost 10 years, she said, her voice steady but laced with a quiet ache. "He was older, had a son from his first marriage. I tried to be the perfect stepmom, the perfect wife, hosting dinners, supporting his career, but it was exhausting. There were cracks I ignored for too long. He started staying out late, making excuses. Turned out there was someone else, younger, less complicated. The divorce was messy but necessary. I moved here to start over, but some days it feels like I'm just existing." I set my mug down, feeling a pull toward her that I couldn't explain. "That sounds heavy." "I'm sorry you went through that." She shrugged, but her eyes glistened slightly. "It's in the past, but it makes you question if you're ready for anything new, especially with someone younger." There it was, the age gap hanging unspoken until now. I leaned forward. "Evelyn, I don't care about that. Age is just a number. What matters is how I feel when I'm around you. Like I'm not just fixing things, but building something real. She looked at me then. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw the walls come down a fraction. You're kinder than you let on. Noah. From that morning on, things shifted. We started texting. Simple stuff at first, like sharing a funny article or asking about each other's day. How was the lecture? I'd ask, and she'd reply with a story about a student who finally got excited about Shakespeare. Calls followed late evenings, where we'd talk about books she'd recommended or projects I was working on. One night, she shared a photo of her cat perched on the fence between our yards, captioning it, "Our little bridge." I smiled at my phone, realizing how much I looked forward to those messages. A week later, she invited me over for dinner. "Nothing fancy," she said, "just pasta and salad." Quote. I showed up with a bottle of wine, and she greeted me at the door in a casual blouse, the kitchen smelling of garlic and herbs. We ate at her dining table, the conversation flowing easily about her passion for teaching, my love for hiking trails outside the city. As we cleared the plates, she reached for a glass and it slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," she said, bending down quickly, her cheeks flushing. I knelt beside her, picking up shards. "Hey, it's just a glass, no big deal." Quote. Our hands touched as we cleaned up and she paused, looking up at me. "You don't have to be perfect with me, Evelyn," I whispered. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in and we shared a quiet hug, her head resting against my shoulder for a moment that felt endless. When she finally stepped back, her eyes were soft. "Thank you, Noah, for seeing me." That night, as I walked home, I knew we'd crossed a line. Not dramatically, but gently, like stepping into a new room together. As the weeks turned into months, the shift between Evelyn and me felt both exhilarating and terrifying. What started as a playful moment at the party had blossomed into something undeniable. Texts that stretched late into the night, shared dinners that lingered longer than planned, and those quiet hugs that said more than words ever could. But with that came the reality of the world around us. And it didn't take long for the whispers to start. It began innocently enough with the neighborhood grapevine. Rochester suburbs might seem sleepy, but gossip travels fast here. A few days after our first real dinner, I ran into Mrs. Thompson, the chatty retiree, 2 doors down while I was out jogging. She waved me over with a knowing smile. "Noah, dear, I hear you and Evelyn are getting quite friendly. She's a lovely woman, divorced, you know. Just be careful, she's got a few years on you." I forced a polite laugh, muttering something about just being good neighbors, but her words stuck like burrs. By the end of the week, it was everywhere. At the local hardware store, the cashier, a guy I'd known since high school, grinned as he rang up my light bulbs. "Heard about you and the professor across the street. Bold move, man." I played it off, but inside it gnawed at me. Were we that obvious already? Evelyn handled it better than I did, at least on the surface. She'd laugh it off when we'd walk together to the corner market, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. One afternoon, as we sat on her porch sipping iced tea, she brought it up. "The ladies at my book club were asking about you today." Subtle as a sledgehammer. "That young engineer neighbor of yours seems sweet." She rolled her eyes, but her voice had an edge. I told them we're friends, but they don't buy it. I reached for her hand. "Does it bother you?" She squeezed back a little. "Not because of you, but because it reminds me how people see us. I'm the older divorce, say, and you're the young guy who could have anyone." I shook my head. "Let them talk. We're not hurting anyone." But the pressure didn't stop at the neighbors. My family got wind of it soon after, probably from my sister who'd visited and noticed how often I mentioned Evelyn. Mom called one evening while I was tinkering in the garage. "Noah, honey, your aunt ran into Mrs. Wilkins at the grocery store. She mentioned you and that woman across the street, Evelyn, right? She's older than you, isn't she?" I wiped grease from my hands, sighing, "Yeah, Mom, she is 11 years. But she's amazing, smart, kind, makes me want to be better." There was a pause on the line. "I'm happy if you're happy, but think about the future. What if she doesn't want kids? What if things get complicated down the road? You're still young. Don't rush into something that might not last." Her words hit hard, echoing doubts I'd buried. I defended us. Age doesn't define us, Mom. She's been through a lot, and so have I. But after hanging up, I stared at my phone, wondering if she was right. That night, I texted Evelyn. Talk to my mom, she's worried. Her reply came quick. Mine would be too, but we'll figure it out. Evelyn's insecurities surfaced more openly as the rumors swirled. One weekend she caught a cold. Nothing serious, but enough to keep her home. I showed up unannounced with chicken soup from the deli and a stack of her favorite novels I'd borrowed from the library. She answered the door in pajamas, her nose red, looking vulnerable in a way that tugged at me. You didn't have to, she said, but let me in anyway. I heated the soup while she curled up on the couch under a blanket. As we ate, she grew quiet. Noah, sometimes I wonder if this is fair to you. I'm 38. I've got baggage. An ex-husband's kid who barely talks to me anymore. You could be with someone your age, someone without all this history. Tears welled up, and she wiped them away quickly. I feel old next to you. I set my bowl down and knelt in front of her. Evelyn, you're not old. You're experienced, wise, beautiful. And yeah, we've got challenges, but that's life. I don't want easy. I want real. She pulled me into a hug, her head on my shoulder. You're too good for your own good, she whispered. To push back against the noise, I convinced her to join me for a family barbecue at my parents' place a couple of hours away. She hesitated. What if they hate me? But I insisted. They'll love you once they know you. We drove up together, her hand in mine on the gear shift. Mom greeted us warmly enough, but I saw the appraising look. During dinner, questions came. How's teaching going, Evelyn? Noah says, you're divorced. Must be tough. Evelyn handled it gracefully, sharing stories about her classes and even making Mom laugh with a tale about a student's wild interpretation of Shakespeare. By dessert, the tension eased. On the drive home, Evelyn exhaled. That wasn't as bad as I thought. I grinned. Told you. They're coming around. One rainy evening, we took a walk under shared umbrellas, the street slick and shiny. She stopped suddenly, turning to me. If you ever want someone younger, someone without the stares and whispers, you'd tell me, right? Her voice was small, raw. I pulled her close, rain dripping around us. I'd tell you the truth, and the truth is, I won't want that. You're it for me, Evelyn. We kissed then, soft and sure, the world fading away. In that moment, the barriers, the age, the gossip, the doubts felt surmountable. We were choosing each other, and that was enough to keep going. After that rainy walk where we sealed our commitment with a kiss that felt like a promise, Evelyn and I decided it was time to stop tiptoeing around the edges of our relationship. No more half-truths or evasive answers when people asked. We weren't hiding anymore. We were ready to own it. The first step was meeting her mother, Elizabeth, who lived about 40 meters away in a cozy cottage on the edge of a small town. Evelyn was nervous, twisting her hands in the car as we drove up. She's protective, she warned, and she'll grill you about everything. Job, intentions, the works. I squeezed her knee. Let her. I have nothing to hide. Elizabeth was waiting on her porch when we pulled up, a sharp-eyed woman in her mid-60s, with silver-streaked hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She hugged Evelyn tightly, then turned to me with a polite but scrutinizing smile. So you're the young man who's got my daughter smiling again. Over lunch, homemade quiche and salad from her garden. She didn't hold back. What do you do for work, Noah? Quote. I explained my engineering role, the projects I handled, how I enjoyed the problem-solving aspect, and your plans, family, kids. I met her gaze steadily. I want those things someday, but right now, I'm focused on being there for Evelyn. She's the one who makes me think about the future, seriously. Elizabeth nodded slowly, watching as I refilled Evelyn's water glass without her asking. By the time we left, she pulled me aside. Evelyn doesn't open up easily. If you're the one who got through to her, don't let her down. I promised I wouldn't. And as we drove away, Evelyn exhaled. She likes you. That's huge. Next came integrating with my friends. I'd mentioned Evelyn to my buddy Josh in passing, but he hadn't met her yet. I set up a casual group hangout at a local brewery. Me, Josh, and a couple of other guys from work. Evelyn was hesitant at first. What if they think I'm too old for this crowd? But she showed up in jeans and a cozy sweater, her hair loose, looking effortlessly at ease. The guys were surprised at first. Josh's eyes widened when I introduced her as my girlfriend, but she won them over quickly. She jumped into a debate about classic books versus movies, holding her own with sharp wit and a genuine laugh. By the end of the night, Josh clapped me on the back. "Dude, she's cool. I get it now. You look happier than I've seen you in years." Evelyn beamed on the way home. They didn't make me feel out of place. "Thank you for pushing me." Life threw its curveballs, though, testing us in ways that deepened what we had. A few months in, I lost a big contract at work. A client pulled out last minute, leaving my team scrambling and me questioning my skills. I came home frustrated, slamming cabinets in the kitchen. Evelyn showed up at my door with takeout Chinese, sensing something was off from my texts. "Talk to me," she said, setting the food down. I vented about the setback, the fear of falling behind in my career. She listened without interrupting, then cupped my face. "Noah, one loss doesn't define you. You've got talent. I've seen it in how you approach everything. Keep going. The right opportunities will come." Her words pulled me out of the slump, and sure enough, a better project landed a week later. "You believed in me when I didn't," I told her later. "That's what partners do." Then came the scare with her mom. Elizabeth had a high blood pressure episode and ended up in the ER one night. Evelyn called me in a panic at midnight, her voice breaking. I threw on clothes and drove straight to the hospital, picking her up on the way. We spent hours in the waiting room, me holding her hand as she paced. When the doctor finally said Elizabeth was stable, Evelyn collapsed against me in relief. We stayed overnight, taking shifts by her bedside. In the dim hospital light, Evelyn leaned her head on my shoulder. "I don't know what I'd do without you here." I kissed her forehead. "You don't have to find out. I'm not going anywhere." In between those big moments, we built routines that felt like home. We adopted a stray cat that wandered between our yards, naming him Whiskers, and took turns feeding him. Weekends meant gardening together. I'd dig while she planted bulbs, our hands dirty, and conversations meandering from work stress to dreams of travel. One evening, we argued over something silly, my packed schedule leaving less time for us. Voices rose, frustration spilled out. "I feel like I'm always waiting," she said, tears in her eyes. I paused, realizing I'd been selfish. "I'm sorry. You're right. I need to balance better." We talked it through till dawn, ending with apologies and a promise to communicate more openly. "No more holding back," I said, pulling her close. She nodded. Deal. Those small conflicts, resolved with honesty, only made us stronger, healing the scars from our past, one shared sunrise at a time. Nearly a year had passed since that mock proposal at Mr. Wilkins' party. And in that time, Evelyn and I had woven our lives together in ways that felt as natural as breathing. The doubts, the whispers, the family concerns, they'd all faded into the background, replaced by a quiet certainty that we were building something lasting. I'd started thinking about the future more seriously, not in abstract terms, but in real tangible steps. One evening, as we sat on her porch watching the sunset, I slipped away mentally, planning what came next. I wanted to make it official, but in a way that echoed how we'd started. Surrounded by the people who'd watched us grow from neighbors to something more, I kept it secret, enlisting Josh to help with the logistics. We turned my backyard into a simple gathering spot. String lights draped over the fence. We shared a long wooden table borrowed from the community center covered in white linens and scattered with wildflowers from the florist downtown. I invited our closest friends, a few understanding neighbors like Mrs. Thompson, who'd warmed up to us after seeing how happy Evelyn was, and even our families. Mom and Dad drove up, and Elizabeth came too. Her skepticism long since softened into quiet approval. The excuse? Quote, "A neighborhood appreciation dinner." I told Evelyn, downplaying it as just a casual get-together to thank everyone for their support over the year. The evening arrived crisp and clear, the air scented with grilled vegetables and fresh bread. About 24 people showed up, milling around with drinks in hand, laughter filling the yard. Evelyn looked stunning in a soft green dress. oblivious to my nerves as she chatted with Josh's wife about books. I waited until after the main course when the sun had dipped low and the lights twinkled on. Heart-pounding, I grabbed a wireless mic from the small speaker setup and cleared my throat. "Everyone, can I have your attention for a sec?" The chatter died down, faces turning toward me expectantly. Evelyn raised an eyebrow, sensing something was up. I stepped toward her, pulling a small velvet box from my pocket. The ring inside simple, a solitaire diamond on a platinum band, chosen because it reminded me of her understated elegance. "Evelyn Harper," I said, my voice steady despite the butterflies. "A year ago, I knelt in front of you with a cookie and a joke. I thought it was just for laughs, but it opened the door to the best thing that's ever happened to me. You've shown me what real strength looks like, what it means to love without fear. So tonight, in front of the people who matter most, I'm asking for real. Will you marry me?" The yard went silent, then erupted in gasps and cheers. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, her hand covering her mouth as she laughed through them. "Noah, yes, 1,000 times, yes." I slipped the ring on her finger, and she pulled me into a kiss, the crowd whooping around us. We didn't want a big wedding. Neither of us craved the spotlight after everything we'd navigated. Instead, we planned a small ceremony in a nearby park under a canopy of oak trees, turning gold with fall. It was intimate. My parents, Elizabeth, Josh, and a handful of friends, even Mr. Wilkins in his best suit. Evelyn walked down a petal-strewn path in a flowing ivory gown, simple and timeless, her hair adorned with a few fresh daisies. I stood there in a gray suit, heart swelling as Elizabeth gave her away with a proud nod. The officiant kept it short. Vows we wrote ourselves. "Evelyn," I said, voice thick with emotion, "I promise to stand by you through every storm, to fix what breaks and cherish what doesn't. You've made me a better man, and I'll spend every day showing you how much you mean to me." She replied, tears glistening. "Noah, you saw past my walls when I couldn't. I promise to love you fiercely, to grow with you, and to never take our second chances for granted." The reception was back at our shared fence line, now symbolically ours, with picnic tables, string lights, and a playlist of our favorite songs. Toast flowed. Mom raised her glass to unexpected love, and Elizabeth whispered to me later, "You've given her back her spark." We danced under the stars, her head on my shoulder, whispering about the life ahead. Married life settled into a rhythm that felt right, simple, grounded. We combined our homes, turning Evelyn's place into ours with small touches. Bookshelves for her novels, a workbench in the garage for my tools. Mornings meant coffee on the porch, her reading aloud from a poem while I sketched wiring diagrams. We gardened together, planting bulbs that would bloom come spring, and Whiskers the cat became our constant companion, curling up between us on the couch during movie nights. There were arguments, of course, over my long work hours or her tendency to bottle up stress from grading papers. One night, it escalated. "I feel like you're pulling away," she said, frustrated after I'd canceled a date for an emergency job. I snapped back, tired from the day, but we didn't let it fester. We sat down, talked it out until the anger cooled. "I'm sorry," I said, pulling her close. "I don't want to lose sight of us," she nodded. "Me neither. We'll do better." Those moments, raw and real, only strengthened us, proving we could weather the small storms. Evelyn often reminded me, "Don't grow up too fast for me, Noah. Just be you." And I'd reply, "As long as you keep choosing me, nothing else matters." Quote. In the end, I realized happiness isn't about finding the perfect match. It's about embracing the imperfect one who helps you grow, who stands with you through the judgments and joys. Our house, once two separate homes divided by a fence, now glows with shared light every evening. And in that warmth, we found our forever.